Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, my friends. The Mortal Kombat 1 stress test beta is now over, and I figure I can compile some of my thoughts about just the whole experience and talk about it. Now, obviously, not everything was perfect, as the Katana Infinite you're looking at proves, but overall, it was a pretty good experience in my opinion, so let's talk about it. So I guess the first big thing to say out of the gate for Mortal Kombat 1 is it kind of follows the tradition of Mortal Kombat ever since Mortal Kombat 9. Mortal Kombat 9 is a very different game than Mortal Kombat X. Mortal Kombat X is a very different game than Mortal Kombat 11. Mortal Kombat 11 is a very different game than Mortal Kombat 1, and Mortal Kombat 1 is not like any of the games that really come before it. Like, is there some similarities to, say, a little bit of MK9, a little bit of MKX? Sure. But in the end, Mortal Kombat 1 is very much its own beast. Not the least of which is the Kameo system, which you've already seen a few combos now from this gameplay. The Kameo system is very wild. Like, on its absolute most surface level, the Kameos let you do fancier combos. And fancy combos are cool, and we'll talk about combos in a little bit here. But it also just wildly changes up your neutral, your approach, your everything. Like, one of the biggest eye-openers I had early on in my gameplay experience was a dude who was throwing a lot of fireballs, and he had Sonya, so she has the square wave assist, right? And after doing a fireball, he would toss Sonya out. So I try to jump the fireball, and then I get bopped by Sonya in the air trying to jump over the fireball, fall backwards, and then land into the fireball. And at which point, I'm like, okay, this is a very different game. And that's such a basic layer 1 concept, really. Not only do the Kameos give you such explicit combo freedom, also the freedom to do wild things in neutral. Like, let me give you an example I was figuring out with a Katana, and my Katana is not great, but this one example let me win games I probably should not have otherwise have won. So the Kameo assists that don't require a forced animation you can call at any time, like say, right before I cross over the enemy's head with Katana Square Wave, calling the Kano knives, hitting them from an off-screen Kano they could never even see, let alone, perhaps anticipate. I basically called this the scammer setup, because Kano will save you if you're getting hit. If they do anything, they get hit by the knives, and if they get hit by the knives, you do actually get a guaranteed combo. So let's look at this section here, slow-mo, right? So a Square Wave over his head. Before I go over Sub-Zero's head, I call Kano. So I'm now on the other side. Guy thinks free punish, because why wouldn't he? And then gets hit by the knives. And I recover before him, and I get a guaranteed combo. I'm comboing from the knives. So that's greasy. That's such a basic setup with the Kameos that we know, with the characters we know. What if we have Raiden with teleports, right? That's a much stronger setup. Just out of the gate, if I could teleport on the other side of you, and now you have to just sit and wait, because knives are coming on the other side or something like that. And of course, who knows what other Kameos, what other moves we get. Like, just on that level, like, I'm bad with Katana, but I managed to win a lot of games I should not have won, just on the basis of that setup and that setup alone. So the Kameo system, combined with the relative power of character strength, because I think the characters overall are much stronger than they were in MK11, it's going to lead to a lot of fun things. Now, to note on character strength. So I've brought this up in other videos before, but just in case you do not know, there is no more variations. So the concept that was in MKX and MK11 now gone. And now that I've explored with some of the characters, now that I've learned some things with some of the characters, that is so much to the game's benefit, because this means they no longer have to be handicapped and hold certain moves back or something like that, just so they can have a variation. Everyone now gets basically the character's potential maximized out of the gate. Like Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero's a great example. He retains the 50-50 nonsense from Mortal Kombat 11, right? Especially Back 2, which is an overhead launcher, which is something else, right? Back 3 is still low. You can have a knockdown with it. Goes very easily into Kameos as well for combos, all that kind of stuff. So that part of the game's there. But he got Clone back. Clone infamously was just taken out of Mortal Kombat 11, let alone being put to a variation. They put a much weaker version of it in MK11. But it's the proper Clone. The only weakness maybe is it's not as active for as long. But it's definitely Clone. And it's strong in all the same ways Clone was always strong in. And now they also gave him a mid-hitting projectile The clone already cancels out fireballs, and so does this mid-hitting projectile that you cannot neutral duck, like the usual neutral duck the ice ball stuff, right? So the level of power base Sub-Zero has, compared to like MK11 Sub-Zero, is wild. Like, they're almost not even comparable, right? This version of Sub-Zero is just so much better than MK11 Sub-Zero, and he's basically like a mix of MKX and MK11 Sub-Zeros. He has all the 50/50s, the gimmicks, the mix, all that kind of stuff, but he also has the defensive wall and the screen control that MKX Sub-Zero could put out. So put those two together and you get something that's very good. Someone like Liu Kang, honestly, Liu Kang just feels like a very powerful version of the usual Liu Kang moveset. Someone like Kenshi, geez Louise. So Kenshi, like Mortal Kombat X Kenshi, he feels like he's balanced and possessed at the same time, as counting the variations, right? He has a lot of the usual good stuff, but he also has Demon Drop from Possessed. And if you enhance it, it is a bounce that you can get full combos from. So just those two things alone, the usual mid-screen control package, plus the anywhere on the screen overhead that can also juggle from Possessed, that's really good. And he also has an armored run, because why not? That's weird, but sure, let's take what we can get. And then on top of that, just merging some of the better variations for the character, expansive moveset, he is now both a stance and a puppet character. He can control the puppet independently. Like you're seeing here, I'm crouch blocking and I can still move the ghost around. So it's very much like, say, Zato in Guilty Gear. And while blocking, you can make the puppet ghost do all of its various attacks without having to commit to attack yourself. So you don't just got to go crazy mashing buttons. That's interesting. And I do like when it gets hit, it just takes like a breather for a split second, but doesn't go away. So that's already unheard of in Mortal Kombat history. And once again, this is an actual stance. It's not just you going into puppet stance. You actually get all new moves. Like his actual normals and everything completely change. Once you draw your sword and summon the Ancestral Ghost, many of your normals now use the sword. So you get like increased range, especially on stuff like down 3 and down 4. Like normally, they're basically like NRS down 3, down 4, little kicks as you would expect. But once you're in stance, down 2 is now an uppercut, down 3 and down 4 are big time sword pokes. Like the actual moveset change. So when you summon the puppet, you have to worry about the puppet, but then you have to worry about your moveset being different as well, which is admittedly for a beginner, a very giant ask. Kenshi will now definitely be a much more advanced level character. But I applaud NRS because they're going in very interesting places. Also, talking about interesting places, let's talk about combo structure now. So this is the very first combo I figured out at Summer Game Fest, right? And honestly, coming off Mortal Kombat 11, I was not inspired to be particularly creative because Mortal Kombat 11 doesn't allow for particularly creative combos. Like here, eventually I figured out you could get a second back 2 and then do a dive kick off the combo and just get a little bit more damage. Then I eventually figured out the mid-screen freeze isn't a true freeze, so if you have meter, you can do it multiple times per combo. Okay, that's interesting. Then I figured after the freeze, you can do a raw dive kick and then recombo on the ground. Okay. And then you just start putting everything together, and what does this all mean? It means you can get mid-screen off a common forward 1 mid-starter. You can get 40% mid-screen. You can rest assured for the most part, you cannot do anything this involved in Mortal Kombat 11. And this is 40% mid-screen with a whole bunch of hits and all that kind of fancy stuff without the use of a single cameo, by the way. So imagine how much crazier you can get when you start busting out the cameos, right? Even like odd edge case scenarios like his back 3 in the corner with the slide follow-up, you can get some really interesting things with the cameos. And you can rest assured ain't none of this even approaching optimal. This is all really cool and interesting things, and there's still way more to go. So your ability to have just very expression with combos in this game is gonna be the best it's been in a very, very long time. Especially with cameos. Cameos give you so much extra things to look for. Like Sonya's very basic and like lets you get air combos off basically everything, right? But who knows? We got a lot more cameos to go, and cameos affect things like throws too. Like cameos, Sonya's basic forward throw does more damage than Kano's and Jax's, and Jax has the ability to burn meter on his too, right? So they're going to be pretty big game changers, and even without them, the combo system is so much better than MK11. There's something about Mortal Kombat combos, especially Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat X, that are very satisfying to me, much more so than, say, Street Fighter or anime games like Dragon Ball FighterZ. And it looks like that's coming back. So that makes me very, very happy. Now for some other things to talk about. Netcode. Netcode actually works pretty well. I've not really been able to tell. I never like purposely matched up with other people, like where some of my opponents are. But for the most part, I've had very high quality matches. Now, of course, your connection is only going to be as good as, the best, or rather the worst of the two connections. So if someone's on bad Wi-Fi, it's still going to be bad, right? And I've had a few bad matches because the person's very obviously on bad Wi-Fi. But here in the unfinished state, and this is very obviously like a much older build of the game, the netcode is very good. I'm very happy with it. And obviously, the only potential for it is to go up from here. So I would say thumbs up on that. Other things like the stages, like look at this stage, Johnny Cage's apartment. It's amazing. Like, this is one of the best stages in Mortal Kombat history. And like, I know it's like basic, quote unquote. It's not some fantastical thing. It's just an apartment looking over the city, right? But there's color, there's a lot of life. The other stage 2 with the cafe people are in and fighting around, there's a lot more color, life, expression, and just love in a lot of the stages. It's a major step up from the last few games. I'm much more happy that Mortal Kombat has embraced color again, because MKX and MK11 especially were very dreary looking games. A lot of just the aesthetic in general seems to be a lot less self-serious like it is in other games, especially considering things like Sub-Zero says, "Ice to beat you." Like, he would never say something like that in other games, especially because this is Bihan, who is the jerk Sub-Zero, right? He's the bad one. And he's saying silly stuff like that. So just the silliness, the color, like, it reminds me of Mortal Kombat 2 specifically, where it's a good blend of comedy and fun, but also color and all that kind of stuff. Like, it, to me personally, bodes well. Maybe some people, if you want the ultra serious dark grim stuff, maybe you won't like it as much, but for me, looks great. Also, this stage, just a very small thing to bring up. Like, just in the actual background itself, there's so much going on. You can see flocks of birds going by. It's easier to tell in the nighttime version, but there's all sort of like traffic in the highway going to and from the city. Just a very high level of detail. So it bodes well for the rest of the stages, and we've seen some very small hints, and they look really good too. And the fact that there's day and night versions of the stages, and they don't count as different stages, Like a lot of games, like stage day, stage night would be two different stages. No, here it's just like a little toggle. So I do appreciate that very much. I like the fact that armor is back in a big way, because armor was basically gone all the way in Mortal Kombat 11 outside of interactables. And now it seems that everyone has at least one armored move, and it's armored on frame 1. So everyone can defend themselves in a pretty decent way. And that makes me just very, very happy. I like that fatal blows are not as spammable, because they seemingly do not have armor. So you can easily hit people out of it. So there's a lot of things, in case you're somehow misunderstanding this video to this point, there's a lot of things I like. And in fact, I only got one major quibble, and I guess let's talk about it right now, because it's movement to a degree. So walk speeds are not bad. Maybe they can be a little bit quicker, but they're not bad, right? But the dashes, they both feel bad, and you can't cancel them into a block. So like wave dashing not happening at all, right? Let alone anything else. You can cancel them into a duck or an attack, but you can't cancel them to a straight block, which just makes them feel just not very good, especially because like there's very little momentum. If you dash and attack right away, you kind of just barely move forward at all. And I wish there was more momentum while dashing and attacking. And you can dash, duck, and then block, which makes me feel like you should be able to dash and block to begin with. But when you dash, duck, and block, it sucks. It sucks really bad. This isn't a game with a run, which is fine. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to have a run, right? But if you're gonna not have the run, Mortal Kombat traditionally outside of MK11 is known for being a pretty mobile game. MK9, MKX, you can go, right? And MK9 has no run either, and you can go in MK9. And I guess a few characters in MK11, they can have exceptional wave dashes. Like, to me, you shouldn't have characters being identifiably slower than, say, a wave dashing Kotal Khan or something like that, right? So mostly all positive thoughts, few quibbles. Once again, that Katana Infinite, we don't want that Infinite to stay at launch, right? But the movement and just something as simple as like dash blocking, I feel should be better, and well, should be present at all, really. Because, dash into regular block just doesn't work in this game. Other small things like, and this is, who knows, because the balance is definitely going to change come launch. But of the 4 beta characters, I feel like Katana is wildly the weakest of the 4. Sub-Zero feels like he can do some messed up stuff. Kenji feels like he can do some messed up stuff. Liu Kang feels like he can do some messed up stuff. Like, he has low fireball that low profiles other fireballs, EX fireball that destroys all other fireballs, like out of the gate, let alone he's got a bunch of plus on block strings and he does 1,000,000 points of damage anywhere on the screen. Like, everyone feels pretty jacked up, except Katana just feels like Katana, you know, like nothing feels particularly special. So hopefully maybe a little bit more gas in the engine come launch there. And that's about it all in all. So once again, overall, very positive experience just from core gameplay, combos, characters, quality of the netcode. A few things now that I think about it here, you know, at the end of all things, I wish I put more time into is stuff like the up block. Because honestly, most of the time I just forgot it existed. So I just need to explore more with it because I just didn't get to use it that much. I do know that if you do an empty jump and catch an up block, if you do something like a throw, you get effectively like punish counter damage, like say Street Fighter. Your throw will do more like 20% instead of 11%. So that's actually really cool. But yeah, that's something I would like to explore more, hopefully in another beta or something like that down the road. And maybe explore other mechanics I don't even know exist because, you know, there's no tutorial or something like that. And I guess one other quibble, there's no options on top of no tutorial, so you can't change your buttons, which is whatever, right? Except release check is on by default, the negative edge thing. One of the first things I tell every new player to Mortal Kombat is you go to options and turn release check off. But unfortunately, it's very much on by default, which made me drop a lot of combos over the course of the matches, so that was not as fun. But yeah, once again, not a small quibble in the end. That's something obviously very easily rectified come launch. Overall, just fun experience. I had a lot of fun with the game. I'm looking forward to seeing what some of the other characters will be, especially because, once again, I feel a lot of the characters are the best versions of themselves. Like, imagine if Melina is both the equivalent of piercing Melina in MKX and ravenous Melina at the same time. That would be a hell of a character. So a lot of the returning cast, to me, it's going to be a lot more exciting just like, oh, here's, you know, someone who's always been in the games, right? Because their potential is going to be a lot higher than it's been in a very long time. Looking forward to that. But yeah, so I'm gushing too much, I guess. So overall, thumbs up. Looking forward to seeing more from NRS and Mortal Kombat 1 as a whole. And that's about it. And I guess that's the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well. And go out and play some Mortal Kombat.